Welcome back to Everyday Economics, the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We are recording this episode on Friday, March 22nd. And joining me, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, you are, I would say, maybe among my friends and peers and colleagues, maybe one of the best read people. I mean, you are constantly consuming, in particular, news inside of the economic sector. And you shared with me the story from The Economist. The story came out about a week ago, and the headline on it was America's Extraordinary Economy Keeps Defying the Pessimist. I know you were drawn to this like fly to the light, man, because you've been an optimist around the economy. I mean, for the most part, really, even in what were the darkest days, where inflation was just going absolutely bananas. And when we've talked about hard landing, soft landing, no landing, you've never been in the hard landing camp, which is sort of where the doomsayers live.
The charlatans of doom and the prophets of gloom.
Yes. On the choppy seas of the economy, you've kept a level head. The near future, and then you and I just, we just finished talking about, the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is taking a wait and see approach, which is, I think, driving a few people a bit bonkers because they had, in their estimates, assumed that we would be seeing cuts, to the borrowing rate at this point. And that hasn't come to pass yet. And as we talked about in the previous episode, doesn't look super likely before June. What is going on inside of the economy that is allowing it to sort of, I don't know if this is fair characterization, but it's just bobbing along.
Why is America so strong relative to the rest of the rich world? Why is we saw other countries like Japan slip into a recession recently, right? We saw the UK. Why is America so resilient?
It just came out today also that, that Japan's inflation was well over estimate.
And we're seeing inflation come down. We're seeing the consumer just, keep going. It's amazing. But look, there are a couple of ingredients. I think the first one is immigration. We had an aging population. We had massive labor shortages. Lots of people retired during COVID. And all of a sudden we got this surge in immigration. Potentially the reason for the labor force growth that we've seen. Second thing is productivity growth. We get big surges in productivity growth out of nowhere. And to be honest with you, I am proud of the fact that I kind of saw things coming for the most part. But what I hadn't seen coming is what I had called miracle productivity growth. And we got a little bit of a miracle. And that has also helped. We're bringing inflation down from nearly 9%, consumer price index inflation, from 9% down to wherever we are today, which is like the low threes. It's been unbelievable.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back just a couple of ticks, because you kind of, I think you're like, you maybe sneak the slider there. I'm not sure that it hit the corner of the plate or not. You referenced the immigration surge. I mean, the immigration count, talking very specifically about the surge at the southern border, we've got millions of people that have come into the United States that we are subsidizing at the federal, state, and local levels right now, which is putting a tremendous amount of pressure, in particular, on the cities where they land. So, you're going to have to help me to understand.
Look, for sure. But we also have a lot of immigrants that are filling jobs that weren't being filled. And so, we're going to have to wait to see this play itself out. But in the past year, the share of working age Americans or non-Americans, whatever you want to call them, share of working age residents of the United States that are working has surged right, in the last couple of years to a level not seen in almost 20 years. And so a part of the labor supply story has been the immigration thing. We were thinking, well, where are the workers going to come from? Right. And we saw that ease. So anyway, my point is that we got a lot of things going for us that the rest of the world just doesn't have. And so that's why we've continued to dodge a big decline in economic activity. And ultimately, you know, there's also the fact that maybe Fed policy is not that restrictive, right? Based on the fact that, on the factors that I mentioned, if potential GDP is higher because of all these things I mentioned, then perhaps Fed policy is not all that restrictive to start with. So I think that's why we dodged that bullet and we continue to thrive. And then, by the way, you hear Powell always say, look, you know, we need low and stable and predictable inflation to have sustainable economic growth. Well, that's a fact. The fact that inflation has come down somewhat means that we can keep running, and we are running. Now, here's the thing. This economist article that I read about, that I shared with you, what I thought was fascinating about that article is that it pointed to the fact that it is worried. The author of this article was worried that either presidency, Biden or Trump, right, that our next president could cause this to come to an end. This miracle America as economy, thriving economy, to come to an end. And what he points to, the author points to, which, by the way, I think he might not be wrong, is the protectionist agenda from both presidencies. You know, 10% tariffs across the board was a proposal by President Donald Trump. The mass deportation of immigrants was another proposal. And then on the Biden side, of course, there's what the author calls statist ideas about controlling the price of everything, from housing to Snicker bars. And I'm quoting here from the article, right? You also have the federal deficit running 6% of GDP, projected to run at 6% of GDP, which is kind of the highest in a long time, especially in times where we weren't in a recession. And so that is essentially inflationary.
I appreciate your insights as always. You and I have, I think, some differing ideas on immigration. We come at this from slightly different perspectives, but I'm glad that we're able to talk about it. And I just want to say thanks as always for what you do. For Orphe, Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other quality podcasts at americastalking.com.
He ran for state office and was beaten. Started a business and failed. Ran for Congress and lost. But thankfully, Abraham Lincoln didn't give up. Persistence. Pass it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.